Welcome to the Climate Map podcast. The Climate Map, an initiative founded by Covalence Global, outlines the complexities of climate change on a streamlined, action-oriented mind map. This podcast is an archive for our research, highlighting conversations with entrepreneurs, scientists, policymakers, and designers. In this episode, we discuss the role of entrepreneurship and venture capital in the water industry with Peter Yolles. Peter is a managing partner at Echo River Capital, a venture capital firm that he founded in 2021 to invest in software-enabled water and wastewater technologies that improve human health, the environment, and climate resilience. With an MBA from the Yale School of Management and a master's degree in water science, management, and policy from the Yale School of Environment, Peter has over 30 years of experience in the water industry as an impact investor, entrepreneur, operator, and advisor. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from, and what is your background?
Hey, Sophia, it's great to be here. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. I'm born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is where I'm currently from, and I live in Marin County, just north of San Francisco, which is where I've lived for the last 23 years with my wife, and I've raised two kids who are now in college as well. As a devoted water professional, and I've spent my entire career devoted to my personal mission of water sustainability. And I started off doing environmental policy for nonprofit organizations like the Nature Conservancy and Environmental Defense Fund. And then I went on to do master's as an MBA and a master's in water science, management, and policy, and moved into the private sector. So I've been doing finance, water rights trading, being an entrepreneur, and now as an investor at Echo River Capital. All these roles have been in and around water in different ways to contribute to this goal of leading a more sustainable water future in harmony with nature.
Absolutely. So what inspired you to first found WaterSmart Software, and what made it such a successful company?
So I definitely had an entrepreneurial bug growing up, and WaterSmart was the fourth startup that I was involved with, and the first as the founder. So I started it as a side project, and we did a traditional route of applying to an accelerator, which is called Imagine H2O, an accelerator for water technology companies. And we were a winner of the very first competition. And with just a short executive summary of a half a page. And then we went on to use that to establish a pilot project with a local water utility to establish a minimum viable product, or MVP, which we tested, and we found that it worked. And that led from one small utility customer to a much larger water utility customer. We went on to do validation of our technology that worked. And then that led to a very traditional Silicon Valley growth story of taking venture capital, hiring a big team, and having a large impact, so that the company WaterSmart led to having over 200 water utility customers across the country. And WaterSmart was in the business of improving water efficiency for residential and business customers. And the way we were able to do that was to combine data analytics with customer engagement and behavioral science. So what we were able to do was to ingest the data from every single water meter across an entire city. And we would combine that data with everybody else's data and provide personalized communications at specific moments in time when we thought people would be most open to changing their behavior of water use at home. Some of those moments might be when they opened their bill and they saw a high bill and they'd be motivated to use less water, or when they had a leak, we could notify them when our data analytics systems noticed a leak happening, whether that was indoors or outdoors. And the cumulative response of all this was that a city could reduce their overall water demand by about 5% every year. And that was significant because changing behavior was a very low cost way to save water, and especially affordable compared to developing a new water supply. So that was why WaterSmart became very successful to the customer's perspective, was being able to reduce, or the other way to think about it is to meet demand at the lowest cost possible without building or buying anything.
Wow, that's really impressive. And I think it's pretty interesting how you factor in the social behaviors associated with notifications and pulling together data. What eventually led to the acquisition of WaterSmart by Vertex One?
It's a great question. One of the ways to think about this is that WaterSmart had built up a very strong recurring revenue base in millions of dollars. And we had very, very high customer return. So over 100%, I think it was like 120% net cash retention, which meant that we were growing the revenue from our existing customers every year. And so it was a very strong recurring revenue business that was very appealing to a company like Vertex One, who had established a customer engagement platform for energy utilities, and they wanted to do something similar in the water industry. So that was what led to our discussions and the eventual acquisition of by Vertex One. And I'm proud to say that Vertex One has continued to provide and support and market WaterSmart's core technology, and has continued to be used by hundreds of utilities across the United States.
How has your work at WaterSmart Software sort of informed your next journey at Echo River Capital?
After leaving WaterSmart, I thought about how I could have the most impact possible towards water sustainability. And I thought that helping and advising other companies would be a great way to sort of leverage my experience and share what I had learned. So I started advising and then investing, and then that led to the creation of Echo River Capital, which is focused around water sustainability through water technology investing to bring us more in harmony with nature. So that's the goal of Echo River. It's both a market rate return fund and an impact fund. So we measure and track the performance of impact for every company in the portfolio. And that allows me to leverage my experience across dozens of different companies and helping founders grow their companies from 0 to 1. When they start talking with me, usually they have a technology that's validated coming out of a lab or a university, or something that they've invented, and they have yet to commercialize it. And that's a great moment for me and Echo River to step in to help them go to market, try to reach a minimum viable product to create or establish product market fit, and then grow their commercial viability into the future. So we invest at the very first round of companies' capital formation, and that's an exciting time to participate in the growth of a company and to support the founders as they try to achieve their mission and purpose.
Absolutely. So, especially since you're starting at the pre-seed round, I assume, what are some of the key performance indicators that you look for to make sure that Echo River Capital is achieving the impact and the returns that you want to see?
Yeah, it is across both of those, as you mentioned. So on the financial side, right, we're looking to help them establish some initial anchor customers who can be lighthouses and establish validation of their technology in the real world, so that other customers can see that they're being used, they're useful, and they're delivering on the promise of their technology, whether that's saving water, cleaning pollution, avoiding greenhouse gas emissions, all those things that contribute to the impact side of the ledger, which is about improving human health or saving the environment or strengthening climate resilience. So we are working on both the financial returns over the 10-year life of our fund, as well as demonstrating, measuring, and reporting on the impact across each of these areas of water savings, water quality, and climate resilience. And we're about to release our first inaugural impact report in the next few weeks, and that will be available publicly to share with the public and with other potential investors and entrepreneurs.
Awesome. I'll be excited to read that impact report. Um, what do you think, just overall, are your biggest takeaways from the water industry? And what do you think makes a really good water investment strategy?
I think it's a great place to invest for anyone. Water is integral to everything we do as society, everything from residential water use to businesses to ecosystem support. It's a growth industry. Unfortunately, water stress is increasing along with climate change and emissions, and the increasing numbers of stressors on our water supply, from water scarcity to flooding to pollution, to the degradation of our natural environment. All these things put stress on our water system, which means that we have to continually invest more and more to provide this fundamental resource for society and for the environment. So it's a growth industry. A recent report showed that the water industry across human society and the environment is valued at about $58 trillion because of all the ecosystem services in addition to the economic output. So massive industry that will require a lot of private investment into the future. In particular, I think there are a couple growth areas that we're investing in what I call the 3Ds. So the first is to digitize water information or water data through software and sensors. The second is around decentralizing water and wastewater treatment to things like desalination or on-site reuse. And the third is around decarbonizing the water cycle, because about 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions comes from the human management of water. That's things like moving, heating, and treating of water, but also how humans interact with the natural environment, things like irrigated agriculture or reservoir operations all release emissions, unfortunately, things like carbon dioxide, but also methane from wetlands, for example, and nitrous oxide from things like wastewater treatment. So it's a huge problem, and these are the 3Ds that we try to invest in, and where we think the future will require a lot more investment and a lot more innovation.
Definitely. And in order to, propel those 3Ds, what is your future vision at Echo River Capital?
So we think about this a lot. So what can we do over the life of our fund, which is another 10 years or so? And we're going to establish some pretty ambitious impact goals. Right now, we're thinking about how can we achieve a 1 gigaton reduction in greenhouse gas avoidance, for example. And we're going to be establishing water saving and water treatment goals that are just as ambitious for how can we have like a global scale impact on the company through the companies that we invest in, and to support them to grow into globally impactful operations that can help improve the environment, to support human life and society, and to live in a climate-friendly world.
What do you see as the way that the private sector and public policy should intersect when it comes to achieving those sort of goals?
Policy and regulation are really important when it comes to the water sector. There is a lot of government involvement in the water sector. One of the most important ways is for the government to continue funding new innovation. The government already does a lot of this through WIFIA, which is a water infrastructure funding program, or through the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, through EPA. There's a revolving loan fund for water quality improvements, but it also can be done through the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Agriculture is the largest single user of water, and there is so much more that the government can do to support water efficiency and water quality improvements. And just for one example, is by funding, the USDA could fund improvements in sensor technology for fertilizer application. Most fertilizers actually run off the farms. It doesn't get utilized by the crops. And so they run off into our water supply, into our rivers, streams, and eventually the oceans, creating massive drinking water problems, but also problems like dead zones in the Gulf of Mexico that are completely caused by the over application of fertilizer. So that's just one example of where government can help is by providing funding for programs that can do that. We can also think about regulations that reduce the acceptable limits for pollution for things like PFAS, which are carcinogenic pollutants that come from things like Teflon or Scotchgard in our water supply. And there are debates right now about how stringent they should be. Or lead in our water supply. We can do more to remove lead service lines and lead from our schools, for example, to protect our children. So both on funding and on regulations, government has a big role to play to improve water sustainability and human health.
Thank you for that. It's so interesting to hear your perspective because I know that you weren't always in the private sector and you also worked at NGOs. So I was curious to learn more about that. But just to close off, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience?
We need so many more people to come into the water and climate sector to work for startup companies, to pursue careers, to get their PhDs or master's degrees in water. There's so many different types of people, of different types of talent and disciplines. And especially, I want to say, if you're working in a different sector and you're thinking about coming into the water or climate industry, you should, because we need you. We need your talents. You don't have to have a master's degree in water like I do to contribute to making a difference in the world in water sustainability. We need all kinds of people, all different backgrounds and professions. So the water's fine. Come on in and help us.
Thank you so much for all of your insights, Peter. I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to sharing all of these questions with the Covalence audience.
Sophie, it's been great being with you. Thanks for your interest.
You can learn more about the Climate Map at the-climate-map.org.